Attitude, the way a man thinks, has more to do with his success than any other single factor. What the human mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve. Jesus declared, "All things are possible to him that believeth." So a literature evangelist succeeds in direct proportion to the way he thinks and believes. In Christ's Object Lessons, page 339, God's messenger speaks of this important factor. Every soul is surrounded by an atmosphere of its own. An atmosphere, it may be charged with the life-giving power of faith, courage, and hope, and sweet with the fragrance of love. Or it may be heavy and chill with the gloom of discontent and selfishness, or poisonous with the deadly taint of cherished sin. By the atmosphere surrounding us, every person with whom we come in contact is consciously or unconsciously affected. These life-giving, positive attitudes of faith, courage, hope, and optimism come through our connection with heaven, while all negative, sour, critical, pessimistic attitudes come from our fallen nature or direct from our fallen foe. Through a right connection with heaven, we can keep this atmosphere around us. Our attitudes of mind, pure, positive, and truly successful. William James declared that the great discovery of modern man is that human beings can alter their lives by altering their attitudes of mind. So in our cassette seminar number 2, 4 of our strongest union publishing leaders speak to us about how we can improve our attitudes, our thinking, and discipline our minds toward positive success and achievement. First, we'll hear from veteran publishing leader Eric Ristaw, able publishing secretary of the Great Southern Union. Eric Ristaw helped reconstruct a strong publishing program in the Philippines following the shambles of World War II. Wherever he has served, the work has grown and books have been sold, even where they said the people didn't have money to buy. Tell us, Elder Ristaw, how a literature evangelist ought to think about the price of our publications.
In order to have the proper attitude toward price, we must understand, first of all, the attitude of the spirit of prophecy toward the price of our publications, because the spirit of prophecy is the foundation upon which the publishing work is built. The principles given to us by divine inspiration are the principles that guide us today. The following counsel is given in the Colpotter Ministry on page 86, quote, "Many of our publications have been thrown into the market at so low a figure that the profits are not sufficient to sustain the office and keep a good fund for continual use. And those of our people who have no special burden of the various branches of the work do not become informed in regard to the wants of the cause and the capital required to keep the business moving. They do not understand the liability to losses and the expense every day occurring to such institutions. They seem to think that everything moves off without much care or outlay of means, and therefore they will urge the necessity of the lowest figure on our publications, thus leaving scarcely any margin. And after the prices have been reduced to almost ruinous figures, they manifest but a feeble interest in increasing the sales of the very books on which they have asked such low prices. The object gained, their burden ceases, when they ought to have an earnest interest and a real care to press the sale of the publications, thereby sowing the seeds of truth and bringing means into the offices to invest in other publications." End of quote. Our publishing houses and our HHES offices are totally self-supporting institutions. They receive no financial help whatsoever from the tithe or other funds of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. All of the money for their operating expenses have to come out of the sales dollar. Consequently, the price of our literature has to be high enough to cover not only the commissions of the literature evangelists, but the author's royalties, the distribution costs, which includes the cost of advertising, and the contributions to the Literature Evangelist Benefit Fund, from which are paid the monthly rent and auto allowances, the medical and educational allowance, automobile insurance, institute allowance, camp meeting allowance, rally expenses, emergency appropriations, and so forth. Just the contribution to the Literature Evangelist Benefit Fund amounts to an average of 8 to 10% of the selling price of the literature. In addition, 0.75% of the selling price is sent on to the General Conference Suscitation Fund to provide retirement benefits for our literature evangelists. When all of these costs and assessments are considered, it is almost a miracle that the prices of our subscription books are so reasonable. Furthermore, price does not make the sale, because the sale is made in the mind and not in the pocketbook. People buy in order to satisfy their needs and wants, and while price is a factor in their ultimate decision to buy, it is not the predominant factor. When a prospect evaluates your product, he consciously or unconsciously compares your price to the price of a competitive product. Then he begins to compare the special features of your product to the product with which he is familiar. If he is comparing your literature to ordinary books without having been informed of the quality of the paper, the durability of the bindings, and the high initial cost of the special paintings that make up the illustrations, then he might logically assume that your literature is high in price. However, if you have demonstrated the quality of the various components and features of your literature and compared it to a familiar competitive product, such as the price of a set of encyclopedias, your prospect's attitude towards the price will be the same as yours, namely, yes, it is somewhat high, but considering the quality and the many benefits that it will bring, it is well worth the price that is being asked. Keep in mind the old rule, what comes from the heart goes to the heart. If it is in your mind that the price of your literature is too high, this feeling cannot be hidden from your prospect, no matter what you try to say to justify the price. It will not ring true and will have a negative effect upon the prospect. If, on the other hand, you are enthusiastic about the benefits that your service has to offer and have the conviction in your own mind that your literature is of the highest quality and is worth much more to your prospect than what you are asking for it, this enthusiasm will become contagious, and a conviction will possess the mind of the prospect that the price is reasonable for such high quality and beneficial literature. Into a mind thus convinced comes an overwhelming desire to possess such beautiful and worthwhile literature, and the command goes forth to the pocketbook, open up and pay the price. Remember that it is not the pocketbook that says, I can't afford it, it is the mind. If the pocketbook is empty and the mind wants something bad enough, it will direct the pocketbook to borrow the money in order to secure what the mind wants. While it is true that there is a class of people who buy on price, it is also true that this group represents only a very small fraction of the buying public. Most people do not rush out to a sale and buy a lot of items that they do not need simply because they are marked down in price. Most people will not buy a size 16 shirt if their own collar size is only 15, regardless of how low the shirt is marked down. They might buy the larger size shirt if they thought it would make a suitable gift for someone else. But even then they would not buy it for this purpose, regardless of the price, if the shirt were blemished, shop-worn, or looked cheap. Most people would be willing to pay substantially more in order to secure a shirt that was the proper size, a suitable color, and which made the person feel dressed up and not self-conscious. Remember that the overwhelming majority of your prospects will manifest this same proper attitude toward the price of your books if, in the first place, your own attitude towards the price is proper, and secondly, if you have justified the price you are asking by demonstrating to the prospect that he will receive much more in benefits from the literature you are offering than the comparatively small price that you are asking for it. Inasmuch as your own attitude towards the price is the foundation upon which your prospect's attitude toward the price will be built, it is of prime importance that your own attitude towards price be proper. If you are not already convinced that the books you are selling are well worth everything you are asking for them, then what can you do in order to develop this proper attitude? You should make a thorough analysis of the authorship, construction, and quality of materials of the books you are selling. Ask yourself the following questions. How do my books stack up against similar books produced by non-Adventist publishers? How does the message in the competitive literature compare with the message contained in the literature that I am selling? How many years of study, research, and experience entered into the development of the message in the competitive literature? How lasting are the benefits of the competitive literature? Do they end after the first casual reading? Do they help for a lifetime, or do they help for eternity? What shall it profit a man if he should gain the whole world and yet lose his own soul? If my literature were to be the means of bringing eternal life to some member of the purchaser's family, how much would my books be worth? If my literature will inspire a little child to walk in the footsteps of Jesus, who can estimate its value? If the literature that I sell today becomes the instruments in the hands of God to snatch a burning brand from the fire and make it a useful timber in the building of God's temple, how can I ever say the price is too high? It would be cheap enough if it were priced as high as fine diamonds or pearls of great price. As I compare the construction of other literature with the construction of my own, I cannot help but think of the many, many hours of exhausting effort put into writing, editing, proofreading, illustrating, composing, printing, collating, binding, checking, wrapping, storing, shipping, promoting, accounting. What detailed planning! So much prayer, such pride of craftsmanship. All this in order to give me literature to sell that not only has a message for eternity, but crafted and produced with such exactness and carefulness that I can leave it in the homes with pride, confident of the fact that there is no other literature available offering such lasting benefits, produced with such dedication and care, and made of such high-quality materials. Truly, the literature that I am selling has no competition in value of content, quality of construction, aesthetic beauty, and comparative reasonableness of price. My lingering doubts are consumed in the growing conviction that price is an insignificant factor in the value of my literature, and that if I persuade the poorest of men to sacrifice their bread, if need be, in order to secure my literature, then I have done them an eternal favor. For man shall not live by bread alone, and what shall a man give in exchange for his soul?
Next, we will visit the office of Elder Paul Burnett, Publishing Secretary in the interesting and challenging Atlantic Union Conference. Paul has trained hundreds of successful literature workers in several large conferences and unions. Tell us, Elder Burnett, what should be a successful literature evangelist's attitude toward time?
First, we shall deal with the value of time, and later, the shortness of time. Someone has rightly said, our time belongs to God and every moment is His. This does not mean that every moment of our life we must be engaged in literature evangelism or in studying books pertaining to literature evangelism or salesmanship. True, there must be regular hours set aside for working, study, recreation, and for devotion. It is only when any one of these are neglected that we face problems. It is true that the human family has scarcely begun to live when they begin to die. No wonder someone has said, of no talent that Christ has given will He require a more strict account than of our time. He regards every moment as precious. It is thus that we should regard it. We are admonished by the great apostle to redeem the time, and that time squandered can never be recovered. We can never call back one moment. The only way in which we can redeem our time is by making the most of that which remains. Now is the time to labor for the salvation of our fellow man. Every moment is filled, as it were, with eternal consequences. We must stand as minutemen ready for service. The opportunity that we have each day to speak to some needy soul may never again occur. We are told that every day the Lord brings us in contact with judgment-bound souls to see if we will faithfully witness to them. Yes, life is too solemn to be absorbed in temporal and earthly matters. Every man and woman who is truly converted will be a diligent worker. It is true that upon the right improvement of our time depends our success in acquiring knowledge and mental culture. If you did not read the articles in the ministry magazine during the months of March, April, and May of '73, you would benefit greatly from reading these articles dealing with the value of time. The Bible gives no endorsement to idleness. It can truly be said that it is the greatest curse that afflicts our world. Union leaders around the world are asking for and hoping to get a 4-day work week. Why? So people can have 3 days a week off for pleasure and idleness. But listen to this. A few moments here and a few moments there that might be fittered away in aimless talk. The morning hours so often wasted in bed. Time spent in traveling or waiting for those who are tardy in keeping appointments. If a book is kept at hand, and these fragments of time were improved for study, what might be accomplished? The resolute purpose, persistent industry, and careful economy of time will enable men to acquire knowledge and mental discipline which will qualify them for almost any position of influence and usefulness. Just think of that, fellow workers. That statement is from the pen of inspiration, and she says that if we are careful in our time and use it wisely, we will be enabled to qualify for almost any position of influence and usefulness. Fellow literature evangelists, it is our duty to acquire habits of order, thoroughness, and dispatch. Someone has said that by tact and method, some accomplish as much in 5 hours as others do in 10. This is very, very true with literature evangelists. Some literature evangelists will spend an hour or an hour and a half in a home, wearing themselves out canvassing, and many times wearing the patience of the customer out. Others go in and give an enthusiastic, energetic, inspiring canvass, and in 15 or 20 minutes wrap up the canvass, and they're on their way to the next home. Please remember that all of us only have about so much energy and time, and if we use too much in one place, we are depleting our resources to be used at the next, and the next, and the next house. But let us think about this statement. It says that by tact and method, some will accomplish as much in 5 hours as others do in 10. Let's stop and think about our daily program. Let's time ourselves at the next home. How much time do you use in the introduction, in giving the pre-canvas, the canvas, and the close? If you are now taking an hour to an hour and 15 minutes to wrap up each demonstration, I guarantee you that you can accomplish just as much in 30 or 35 minutes in many, many instances. Yes, time is the stuff that life is made of, so let's value it perhaps a little more than we have in the past. They say the greatest room in the world is a room for improvement, and I am sure that each of us can find areas where we can improve in our time. The Bible makes it clear that whatever line of work we engage in, we are not to be slothful in business, but fervent in spirit, serving the Lord. It also says, whatsoever thy hand findeth to do, do it with thy might, knowing that of the Lord ye shall receive the reward of the inheritance, for ye serve the Lord. How true the statement. Of no talent that Christ has given will he require the more strict account than of our time. we are to improve it to His glory. We are told that the life of Christ from His early years was a life of earnest activity. He lived not to please Himself, and into all His secular labor He brought the same perfection as into the character He was transforming by His divine grace and power. I know one assistant publishing secretary who stated that he had a goal to see every literature evangelist in his district working 40 hours and nothing less per week. He is a leader that not only talks about what literature evangelists should do, but he also demonstrates it by working faithfully each week by the side of the literature evangelist. Please remember this. It is not a matter of just putting time in that counts, but it is putting something into every hour that we work. By reading several pages a day from the books that we are selling, we will charge our battery to the extent that we will be more enthusiastic, and your enthusiasm will be contagious as you are sitting there before judgment-bound souls. Now, for a few moments, I want to consider with you the need of sensing the shortness of time. How late is it? Those of us who've been members of this great Advent movement for 10, 15, 20, or 30 years are in danger of losing our sense of the shortness of time and the worth of a soul. Paul says that the night is far spent. What does that mean to you? What does it mean to me? If someone were to ask you today, brother, sister, how late do you think it really is? What would your testimony be? Time is short, fellow workers, and the enemy will make every effort to magnify in our minds matters of lesser consequences and lead us to regard lightly the work that needs most to be done now. In the book of Revelation, we are told that one of the last great signs will be that all the world will wonder after the beast. If you have been reading the Review and Herald lately and studying the prophecies in the book of Revelation and reading from the great controversy, you can see that the world today is wondering after the beast. You may have read the article recently where a teenage Salvation Army girl was impressed with the Catholic Church. She wanted to join the order of Little Sisters of Jesus. When she discussed this with a high-ranking Salvation Army commander, he smiled and said, "If that is where God wants you, then go." She went and was accepted. In the SDA Bible Commentary on Volume 7 on page 967, we are told that we are in danger of a perilous unconsciousness of the shortness of time. Recently I read where Dr. Ramsay, who is the Archbishop of Canterbury, has a strong vision of one united Christian church, of the ultimate healing of quarrels, and of the Anglican communion united with the See of Rome. He went on further to say, "I think that Rome rightly conserves a certain note of supernatural authority, and I am glad that she does so, because I think it is something that Christianity does need." End of quote. This, coming from the Archbishop of the Church of England, should help us to see anew that the world is wondering after the beast, and that soon, how soon, no one really knows, the end will come. Jesus said, "I must work the works of him that sent me while it is day, for the night cometh when no man can work." In another place he put it this way, when his disciples were more concerned about eating than they were about the salvation of the Samaritans, he said, "My meat is to do the will of him that sent me, and to finish his work. Say not ye, there are yet 4 months, and then cometh the harvest? Behold, I say unto you, lift up your eyes, and look on the field, for they are white, ready to harvest." This is a wonderful illustration, helping us to realize that in every town and village and community there are souls that need to be reached with God's everlasting message. Many of them are hungry for the bread of life and will never hear the message unless it is taken to their door by a godly literature evangelist. May the Lord bless us as we sense anew the value of time and the shortness of time, and determined by His grace and power to redeem the time that remains.
Now we look in on Charles Barnes, the capable publishing leader of the Columbia Union, the union that is currently leading the world field in literature sales. Perhaps we can learn from him the kind of thinking or attitudes that produce such outstanding achievements. Charles Barnes, what kind of vision do our literature workers need?
I was attending one of our churches in New Jersey. The 11 o'clock service was over. The congregation, along with visiting literature evangelists, had assembled in the basement of the church to enjoy the noon meal together. After getting my food, I made my way to a table where a number of young couples were seated. I wanted to talk to some of them about being literature evangelists. As soon as I had found my place, I turned to the person on my left and asked, "What is your name?" He replied and then said, "This is my wife." Just as I was ready to ask him about his work and his plans for the future, his wife said, "During the 11 o'clock service, there was some talk about call porters. There was some talk about literature evangelists. What's the difference between a call porter and a literature evangelist?" Before I could answer that question, the man said, "What is this I'm eating?" as he pointed to a good Seventh-day Adventist entree. I decided I had better ask different questions, so I said, "How long have you attended this church?" The gentleman replied, "My wife was baptized 2 months ago. I plan to be baptized in 2 weeks." I was naturally interested in how this young man and his wife happened to become interested in Seventh-day Adventism. Before I could ask the question, he continued by saying, "Do you know Roy, who is a member of this church?" I said, "Certainly I know Roy. He is one of our literature evangelists." The young man said, "Roy came to our house, studied the Bible with us. We decided to be Seventh-day Adventists. And you know something? I have a secret. Roy doesn't know about this yet. Just as soon as I'm baptized, I'm going to do the very same kind of work that Roy does." Even before that man had become a Seventh-day Adventist, he had a vision of what could be accomplished by a literature evangelist. More of us need that same vision. I believe that Roy had that vision when in the year 1972 he had 11 baptisms. Another of our literature evangelists had a special vision at the beginning of 1973. He had a vision of delivering over $50,000 worth of Seventh-day Adventist books for the year. Will his vision be realized? Yes, and more. As of November, that man has already reached over $51,000 in sales. He is attempting to reach $60,000 before the end of the year. When a person has a great vision, outstanding things can be accomplished. The Lord knew this, and we're told in Proverbs 29:18, "Where there is no vision, the people perish." The people in your territory are depending upon you. You must have a vision that will enable you to reach all of those people with the Seventh-day Adventist message. Unless we reach them, they will perish in their sins. Without a vision on your part, my part, people around us will perish. The Lord is anxious for us to have a great vision. He is anxious to accomplish great things through you and me. Listen to this sentence from Colporteur Ministry, page 119. He longs to have you expect great things from Him. I'm sure that the Lord would like to see many of us plan to accomplish far more than what has ever been done in the past. Why should we be content with making 3 or 4 sales a week when the Lord would like to have us make 3 or 4 sales every day. He wants everyone to have Seventh-day Adventist books. He will help me and you reach greater goals if we will allow Him to work through us. There is no limit to what the Lord can do through me and through you. We limit Him only when we prevent His Spirit from working with us. Listen to this statement from Colporteur Ministry, page 48. God can use every person just in proportion as He can put His Spirit into the soul temple. Every morning we should bow our heads and ask the Lord to fill us with His Spirit. We should ask Him to give us the vision that He would like for us to have for the day. We should dedicate our lives, our energy, our time, our efforts to Him, and pray that He will work through us to accomplish what He would like to have accomplished for the people. We read of the experiences of the disciples and often wish that we could accomplish some of those great miracles that were performed through them. But listen to this sentence from Colporteur Ministry, page 104. He is just as willing to manifest His power through us as through the first disciples. Actually, the Lord is looking for people who have vision. The Lord is looking for people who will let His Spirit work through them. In Colporteur Ministry, page 109, to everyone who offers himself to the Lord for service, withholding nothing, is given power for the attainment of measureless results. It's easy to say, yes, I would like to accomplish great things. I would like to have the vision, and I do have the vision, but I don't have the talent or ability to accomplish what I would like. But actually, the Lord promises to give us that too. Listen to this sentence from the same page, Colporteur Ministry 109. God will accept the wholehearted service and will Himself make up the deficiencies. The Lord has not only made provision for us to have outstanding success, but He is actually longing to have us attempt great things for Him, for He loves us so much that He cannot and will not disappoint us. If we go through life expecting small things, we are going to receive small things. If we go through life expecting the Lord to do great things for us, and using what talent and ability we have in a positive way, He will accomplish great things through us. Young children know how to get their parents to do anything they want them to. They learn quickly just how to manipulate the parents and get them to buy the ice cream or visit whatever place the children would like to visit. Early in life, the child comes to the father and says, "Daddy, will you do such and such for me?" If Daddy hesitates to answer yes or no, the little child, jumping up and down in glee and clapping his hands, says, "Oh, goody, goody, Daddy's going to do such and such, Daddy's going to do such and such." It's very, very difficult for a parent to disappoint a young child who takes that approach. We have a Heavenly Father who loves us much more than a parent loves a child. He is waiting for me and you to come to Him asking that great things be accomplished through us. He wants us to have the vision of great things being accomplished in our work. Actually, Christ had that same type of vision when He was here on earth. In Hebrews 12:2, we're told that Christ, for the joy that was set before Him, endured the cross, despising the shame. What was this joy that was set before Christ when He was here on earth? In Great Controversy, page 671, it was for the joy that was set before Him, that He might bring many souls into glory, that He endured the cross and despised the shame. When Christ was here on earth, He had the vision of seeing men and women saved in heaven. This motivated Him to give His all for the salvation of mankind. You and I should have the vision of seeing men and women saved in God's kingdom. We should have the vision of seeing men and women purchasing our books, reading our books, learning of the truth of God, living the truth of God, and being saved at last in His kingdom. I have seen literature evangelists who have caught this vision. A number of years ago, I received a letter from one of our workers. This lady wrote to me concerning the physical ailment of her husband. The letter read like this, speaking of her husband. He went with me in the car as long as he could walk to it. It is his legs and feet that we noticed first in his failing. He tries so hard to do for himself, and it isn't safe. She later explained to me what she meant by this sentence. Her husband had been a literature evangelist for a number of years. Actually, the two of them had worked together. He came to the place where he could no longer walk from door to door and sell our books. What did he do? He would have his wife help him to the car in the morning, and his wife would drive the car to a certain area of town and up to a certain house. He would ask his wife to park the car. She would then walk up to the house, knock on the door, and tell the people that her husband had a message for them, but he was unable to walk from the car to the house. She would ask the people to come to the car so that her husband could talk to them. The people would come out to the car, and there this literature evangelist would show the books, and in this method he made many sales. This colporteur said, "We are certainly glad and thankful that we quit the truck work and went into the colporteur work a number of years ago. We only wish we could have done more. We enjoyed it so much." If you could visit with me the small church that this literature evangelist family attended, and if you could watch as we asked the question, how many of you people are attending this church today because of the work of this literature evangelist and his wife? More than half of the people in that congregation would respond by saying, "I'm here today because of this literature evangelist." Why is it that you and I hesitate to let the Lord work through us? Why is it that we're so often satisfied to work only 6 hours a day or 7 hours a day, 25 hours a week, instead of working 8 or 10 hours a day and 45 to 50 hours a week? It would seem to me that the devil does everything he can to keep the literature evangelist satisfied with mediocre attainments. If he can keep me and you from calling on more homes, he can keep more people in darkness. There are many who will never hear the message unless it is carried to their door. The Lord depends upon you to carry the message to the people in your territory. He is anxious for you to have a vision of contacting all of the people. He has promised to give you outstanding success. Why not accept these promises today and do everything you can to make this the best day ever in your experience as a literature evangelist? As you knock on the door, have a vision of seeing the people buying the books, reading the books, accepting the message, and being saved at last in God's kingdom. Many people in your territory right now are looking anxiously to heaven and longing for truth and for light. They are praying for someone to come to their house. The Lord would like for you to be that someone.
We cross the continent quickly now to visit another stalwart Union publishing leader, Elder Art Reiswig of the Great Pacific Union. Through the years, Elder Reiswig and his men have helped us develop some of our best-selling tools. Elder Reiswig, what do you think is the biggest factor in a literature evangelist's success?
I believe more colporteurs fail for the lack of self-management than any other reason. Sales managers of the world agree that the typical salesman spends far too little time in self-management, especially in the area of working out schedules, routing his calls, planning his sales presentation, keeping records, making reports, and other details that involve every individual in life. The greatest need most of us have is not more knowledge of how to win friends and influence people, a greater knowledge of the books, nor even a better knowledge of the Bible. But the greatest need is to do that which we know we ought to do and having a plan to do it. That is true in all phases of life, but in none is it more true than in the work of literature evangelism. What is planning ahead? Planning ahead is simply looking ahead. To plan, you must think about your work, about your family life, about your time, and about your territory. One literature evangelist said some time ago, the rub is that planning ahead requires effort. Let's face it, plans are neither easy to make nor easy to carry out. They provide valuable challenges, and they can definitely improve one's accomplishments. Some people never take planning seriously. They say it can never be carried out, and it will be necessary to change my plans anyway. So why make them? The plan may not always be followed, but it can serve as a path or guide. One should draw up his plans as accurately as possible and work with all his might to carry them out. If changes are necessary, make them, but still have a plan. One should have two types of plans. One plan is a short-term plan and the other a long-term plan. First, let us talk about the short-term plan. The short term is planning for the next 24 hours and for the coming week. It seems absolutely essential that the literature evangelist spend from 20 to 30 minutes at his desk making plans for the next day, knowing where he's going the first thing in the morning, routing his calls. When you make your plans, whether it is for the next day or for the coming month or year, use pencil and paper. Write it out. When you see it written down, it becomes much more meaningful. Procrastination has ruined many an individual and kept him from being a top performer. It has kept him from earning the income that his family deserves. It has kept him in the state of mediocrity. It has been said that one of the greatest labor-saving devices today is tomorrow. Some have dozens of reasons why they cannot do something when all they need is one reason why they can. Remember, life is made up of 100 little decisions every day, and the way we handle them determine our happiness and our success. In fact, if you and I are ever saved in the kingdom, it won't be because of any luck or merit on our part. It will be because we have chosen and made decisions moment by moment. Let me ask you, how do you like to do business with an individual who is never really dependable? You can never quite be sure whether they will be there, whether they will keep their promise. A literature evangelist should be a person of decision. The long-range planning that you have made must be reviewed frequently. What progress are you making in the goals you have set for yourself? Is a reevaluation of your program and objectives necessary? Don't hesitate to make them if you discover it is necessary. Then stick to it and follow the plan. Self-management is self-discipline. Self-management is not getting ahead of others, it is getting ahead of yourself. Self-management is guiding every hour of life instead of drifting. Self-management is managing your money, budgeting your earnings. It is not overspending or getting yourself into difficulty by buying unwisely. Self-management is providing time for your family. Self-management is getting enough rest. Self-management is being on time for appointments. We have to recognize that self-management may be one of the most difficult assignments that you have ever had. It must be hard because there are so few good self-managers around. Why don't you be different and set yourself up as one of the best self-managers in the publishing program? Your future will be bright if you learn how to manage. I like Phillips' translation of Ephesians 5:16-21. live life with a new sense of responsibility. Not as men who do not know the meaning and purpose of life, but as those who do. Make the best of your time despite all the difficulties of these days. Don't be vague, but firmly grasp what you know to be the will of God. Perhaps we should mention, too, that the good manager does not just put in 8 hours. He has a plan whereby he sees the people. One can easily spend 8 or 10 hours in the field doing things that seem necessary, such as calling on delinquents, servicing doctor books, and the multitude of things that go with the publishing program. But remember, the only thing that really matters is to be in the presence of a prospect. If you are not, you're unemployed. Only people will buy books from you. Occasionally it has come to my attention that some literature evangelists have only given 5 to 8 or even 10 demonstrations a week. That's not enough. It is impossible for any literature evangelist to expect success unless he exposes his product to a prospect enough times to warrant success. Remember, time is the only capital you have. But you don't own that if you refuse to make use of it. Every minute that slips by is an opportunity lost. You might stop working, but the clock isn't going to stop running. During the busiest days, it seems a remarkably short time between sunrise and sunset. Every literature evangelist should have a plan for self-improvement. In this day of rapid progress in every area of technology and life in general, we must keep up with the techniques of selling and be knowledgeable of what the world does around us. No literature evangelist should be without a plan for self-improvement every week. This will take genuine effort. It would be well for you to consider carefully the statement from Christ Object Lessons which says success is not the result of chance or destiny. It is the reward of faith and discretion, of virtue and persevering effort. Frequently, we find a literature evangelist who has set himself a goal for the year, we'll say $20,000. But often I've discovered this literature evangelist hasn't the slightest idea what this will take. One must figure out just what that amounts to in deliveries for the month or for the week. When a person sets himself an objective or a goal, he should have an idea what he's going to set into motion to bring the results about. Otherwise, his goal is nothing more than a pipe dream. Set yourself a goal. Make it reasonable and then work toward it. If you discover that you have misjudged, reappraise your goal and do everything within your power to bring it about. The spirit of prophecy has much to say about good habits, diligence, and wholeheartedness. Let us take a look at several. Quote, persons who have not acquired habits of close industry and economy of time should have set rules to prompt them to regularity and dispatch. Again, men of God must be diligent in study, earnest in the acquirement of knowledge, never wasting an hour. Remember, it is not an easy matter to turn about and to completely change your pattern of work without effort. In Ministry of Healing, I read, a sudden impulse is not sufficient to accomplish a reformation. Men of business can truly be successful only by having regular hours for rising, for meals, prayer, and retiring. If order and regularity are essential in worldly business, then how much more in the work of the Lord? Now, all this sounds good. But where do I go from here? When do I start? That's just the point. Some of you who listen to me will say, great, and do nothing more about it. Here is the great weakness that most of us are encumbered with. Procrastination takes over in most of our lives and rules us until death. But I dare you to be different. And so, number one, write out your plan. Study it carefully. Talk it over with your spouse. Let your family know what you're about to do. Number two, counsel with your leader on what would be the best plan for you. He will be more than happy to help you. Number three, start on the plan without delay. Number four, talk courage and hope. Be confident. Don't let a seed of doubt enter your mind about whether you can do the job. Believe in yourself. Number five, if you fail, don't give the whole thing up as a bad deal. Start again and reforce yourself to doing the thing that you know you must do. Friend of mine, if you believe that God has called you into the literature ministry, do the very best that is in you. How better could I bring these observations about self-management and organization to a conclusion than to share with you a beautiful thought from Prophets and Kings, page 263. When God opens the way for the accomplishment of a certain work and gives assurance of success, the chosen instrumentality must do all in his power to bring about the promised result. In proportion to the enthusiasm and perseverance with which the work is carried out, will success be given. God can work miracles for his people only as they act their part with untiring energy. He calls for men of devotion to his work.